Alright, welcome to the video. And in this video, I want to talk about Google's interview tips, which actually come straight from their website. I'll include the link in the description. And they actually have a page like this that says Interviewing at Google, Best Practices, Advice, and Tips. But I want to go into this in more detail. And I'm Professor Job Offer, and I've spent the last 10 years with a number of Forbes Global 2000 companies and also helped clients land interviews at companies like Amazon and Google and land job offers with some of the largest companies in the world. And I'm here to share with you my tips and tricks on landing your next job offer. And in this video, I want to discuss in detail about some interview tips from Google in case you get an email from them like this asking you and inviting you in for an interview. We'll start with learning a little bit about what Google is as a company, and we'll take a look at the 4 interview tips that Google give directly from their website, but I'll discuss them in more detail. And lastly, I'll also share with you some interview resources to help you prepare for it. So, what is Google? Well, Google was founded in 1998, so about a quarter of a century ago, and it looked like this, their beta version, the search engine, and it was founded by the 2 PhD students from Stanford University. And as many of us know, it is a tech company. And aside from search engine, they're actually involved in many different areas. And some of you might even have their hardware, the Pixel, the phone. And the name actually comes from the play on word called goggle, and it's a very large number, and it's to signify huge quantities of information. And Google's mission is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. Hence, they have so much information available. So let's go into details about some interview tips from Google. They actually share 4 of them, and starting with connecting a resume with the position. So what they mean by this is you're going to have certain skills, knowledge, competencies, and experience that represent you best, and Google will also have a position and describing what kind of qualifications, skills, and experiences that you need. And you really need to connect those 2 things together on your resume. And when you get invited in for an interview, you need to do the same and be able to make that connection between why you're the best fit for this position. It's because you have the necessary skills, knowledge, competencies, and experiences that Google requires. Secondly, they talk about focusing on the data, and this is the small example they give. But I mean, data may sound a little scary, but we can synonymously say numbers instead. So what I mean by this is instead of just qualitatively saying I made improvements, we're going to put some numbers to it, some specific numbers to say we improved something by 18%, right? Or and you can even, as Google's example suggests, it can say by 22% in 3 months and add additional numbers to it. And another example here, instead of saying I led a large team, okay, that's pretty subjective, but instead we're going to say led a team of 18. To give a better sense of our skills and experience. And number 3, Google says to focus on your past experiences. Well, this is pretty obvious. We are always referring to our past experiences when discussing during job interviews, and this revolves around 3 different things. So your past work experience, the professional experiences, your leadership or any kind of volunteer experiences, and lastly, your education. If you have recently graduated or if you're currently a student. And we're going to rely on the past experiences to answer 2 types of questions, the skill-based questions, and these are actually designed to test and get an evaluation of the candidate's competency, and this also ties back with the skills, knowledge, and experience, and that is how we measure somebody's competency. And some examples of skill-based questions include things like how are you qualified for this job, or tell me about your proficiency with a certain skill or a tool, and or what kind of skills can you bring to this job. I actually have a whole video on this, so you can kind of go back and take a look at it if you want to know more about it. And the second set of questions that we can use our past experiences to answer are the behavioral questions. And behavioral questions are designed to evaluate how well the candidate is fit for the job. So this is not just talking about your skills, expertise, and experiences, but it's more about the candidate's personality and behavior and how they would act in a certain situation, usually in a conflicting situation. And more importantly, behavioral questions helps the company to evaluate whether the candidate has similar values with a company and whether they will also be a good fit with the company's culture. And some of the examples of behavioral questions include things like, tell me about a time you went above and beyond the call of duty, so something you did more than you were asked to do, or describe a stressful situation at work and how you managed to handle it, and what would you do if you can't meet the deadline. So it always gives you a bit of a conflicting situation to ask how you have handled it or how you would handle it. And there's a whole video on that as well, so won't spend too much time on it. And Google's final tip about their interviews is they said come with questions. So what do we mean by that? Well, it means you have to bring some questions for the interviewer. And why is this important? Because it shows that you care and you are interested in the position and in the job, and also it provides an opportunity for a reverse interview. So what we mean by that is as the candidate asks the questions to the interviewer, you can get information, perhaps more about the position or about the company as well. And lastly, I put a little asterisk there because I think this is a vital part of an interview. But having the right questions asked helps you to open up conversations to perhaps take steps into building rapport, which can be one of the biggest assets walking out of an interview. And I also have a whole video on the best questions to ask the interviewer in a job interview, so you can refer to those. So let's move on to some interview resources that are available to you. And well, obviously it's a Q&A thing, so to answer interview questions, one of the most widely used methods out there is the STAR technique or the STAR method. And I have a video on what the STAR technique is and how to use it. And it's actually an acronym that creates a story by following the situation, task, action, and result. And there are resources out there on my channel that give you some guidance in terms of when to use it, so for which questions to use it for, and how to use it to formulate your answers quickly on the spot. And also share with you some examples with more popularly used questions, like describe a time you demonstrated problem-solving skills following the situation, how to describe that, the task, what your responsibilities were, and then the action, how did you become the protagonist or the superhero in the situation to come up with a result that is presentable and can be considered an achievement that really makes you stand out. Otherwise, there are if you're curious about what kind of interview questions Google asks, I also have a whole video on Google interview questions, and I share with you about more than 10 interview questions that Google have asked, such as what is your favorite Google product and what would you do to improve it, or things like I'll describe YouTube to a 7-year-old. So in this video, I had a chance to take a look at what Google is, what kind of company it is, and examined in detail some interview tips from Google, and I shared with you some interview resources as well. But if you're wondering more about, oh, I'm not even worried about interviews at this point, I want to know more about how to write a resume, well, then I have a video on how to use the resume and CV action verbs, and show an example on how to formulate your bullet points on your resume, line by line, literally, to combine the 3 critical details to create impactful bullet points like this on your resume. And if you're wondering, oh, how do I write my education section on the resume, I also go through this line by line, starting with first line and then going to GPA, awards, and how to formulate this in a nice presentable manner. So well, I'm Professor Job Offer, and I'm here to help you land your next job offer. Thanks for watching.